Time's up. Admiral.
Here it comes.
Chevron 1, loaded.
For my ally is the Force. And the powerful ally it is. Life creates it. Makes it grow.
You failed, Your Highness. I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
Cry hammer! And let's set the dogs of war.
Chevron 2 is loaded.
Conan, what is best in life? Crush your enemies, see them driven before you, to hear the lamentation of your women.
It's on reflexes.
Well, I'll also say that you're heavy into martial arts, Tai Chi and all that, killer stuff. I suppose we have to register you as a lethal weapon.
Chevron 3 encoded.
And somebody ought to belt you in the mouth. But I won't. I won't. The hell I will.
Chevron 4 encoded.
Do you expect me to talk? No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
Chevron 5 encoded.
You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Chevron 6 encoded.
Not for while you can, monkey boy.
Great Scott.
Back off, man. I'm a scientist.
Shall not pass! I thought I'd die fighting side by side with Al.
What about side by side with a friend?
A day may come when the courage of men fails, when we forsake our friends and break all bonds of fellowship. But it is not this day.
Chevron 7 is locked.
Hail and howdy. Welcome to Saturday Night Drive-In, where we hope you are able to just take a moment out of this clown world that we live in to celebrate some fun stuff, take a break, enjoy yourself, and remember when things used to be good. We're going to have a good time tonight. I'm in a very good mood. A lot of fun things happening right now. And also, I got to watch one of my favorite movies for this today. It was my choice. Before I do that, hail and howdy to my panelists. Can I still call you my life mate, or is that getting old?
You can still call me whatever you want.
Okay, well, even though in about a week, you're gonna Mustang and Beardo and others are gonna have a strange get together where I'm not gonna be there, and I don't want to know what happens. I'm gonna pretend you're gonna remain pure and faithful to me. So, how you doing, Jed?
I am doing great. Excited to talk about a classic that I'd never gotten around to seeing before, and really, really excited to be here talking about it because, oh boy.
You understand now why we all called it the 2020 simulator, don't you?
In some unfortunate ways, yes. And there are aspects of it that I do have a problem with, mainly the timeline aspect of it.
Yeah, it's a little.
I can't wait to jump into it.
It was I believe it's 1993 is when it was made. So they took a lot of guesses on things in terms of how things would look, but
that's it's not my bigger issue with the timeline. Okay. But we can,
it's really weird, but it's so good. It's so good. Oh, and we are joined by our friend Mustang, who had to be here for this one. Mustang, good evening to you, my friend. How are you?
Pizza Hut, the restaurant of the future.
Well, they all are part of Yum, so it could have been pizza, but it was Taco Bell. Taco Bell.
Only in America was a Taco Bell.
Well,
franchise wars, that's the thing in the future that I totally see happening. It's just like the streaming wars. They're all going to fight each other at some point for dominance, and that one I feel is 100% a prediction. And I don't know if Pizza Hut's going to win because, I mean, you can't out Pizza the Hut, but at the same time, maybe a Chick-fil-A will win out.
There's so many. Well, some Chick-fil-A didn't exist yet, I don't think.
No, they didn't.
No,
really.
Yeah,
if they did, it was just small.
Local. It was very local. If it did, I mean, maybe someone can tell us that. But it is. There's so much to unpack in this movie when you think about it. Anyway, before we get that, hail and howdy to the chat. Hail, Goddess Legionist, along with Mustang here, one of my mods, one of my regulars. Hail, Algrim the Strong. Good evening to you, my friend, good sir. Anybody else just watching and chilling, hanging out, hit that like button because I already know you're going to have a good time. I know you're going to hit that like button. When the re-upload happens, hit the like button again. Leave a comment. Enjoy it. We're happy to have you with us live and on the replay. We hope you enjoy the rest of the show. So, as we've already said, my choice for this week, Demolition Man. This is the epitome of the 90s action movie. The formula, the execution, the casting, the performances, everything about it. It's hard for me to find a lot wrong with this. I had to look because I have to try and be objective, no matter how much I love it. Very few small things. Some of them Mustang knows in previous conversations, and a few technical things that I caught today when I was rewatching it. But Jet, so this was your first time being graced by Demolition Man. Your initial thoughts right now?
Yeah. So, yep, it was my first time. I finished it about an hour ago. Wanted to get as close to the show as I could, and I loved it. It was phenomenal. It was my major problems with it are more stuff that you would have with any movie. Like it does drift into the realm of mindless action, but the 80s were so great at that. And I mean, this is early 90s, but it still feels very 80s that they intentional, so I don't rate them as equivalently as I would in a movie that's trying to be smart. Like this movie unintentionally, I think, is smart in some areas. It is smart intentionally in other areas, and at other times it's just let's bungee jump out of a helicopter. What the fuck? I loved it every second of it, but it's like, did he just bungee jump out of a helicopter? He just bungee jumped out of a helicopter. Wow. But no, it was a lot of fun, a lot of interesting takeaways. It was very dystopian, and I love stories like that, like futures that seem great on the outside that aren't actually. It's a overused trope at this time after we've seen it so many times, but back in the 90s, it's relatively new on-screen big budget concept. There were books obviously with it, like 1984 and Babylon Now were already out by then, so there was a concept at the time, but seeing it visually represented in such a great way, I feel, at least from my limited knowledge, was new and fresh at the time where it's not anymore. So it's kind of cool to see how the genre began, the dystopian film genre began. And technically speaking, this movie was beautiful. Like the CGI, the model work, the set design, everything. Like I believed it was the future. They did such a great job that there were very few flaws. The only effect that I think was a little bit jank was the insta-freeze.
Yeah.
So some of that was a little bit jank, but it was so worth it for how everything played out in the end. And it was just good. It was just fun.
Yes.
This is, I think, the epitome of a perfect escapism movie for multiple reasons, because you're not necessarily thinking about yourself. You're not thinking about your real world, but when you're done, you can still think about it. So it's a thought-provoking escapist film. That's what I have to quantify with a lot of people. For some reason, everybody I talk to, everyone in the comments of my video said, oh, escapism, the only type of escapist movies are Transformer, turn off your brain, dumb, fun action movies. That's the only thing that escapist means. No, escapist just doesn't mean you're thinking about your current life and your current problems. That can be intelligent, that can be stupid, that can be fun, it can be depressing. It just means it's not trying to remind you of where you currently are. That's all escapism means, and this movie exemplifies it in all sorts of 80s and 90s glory, and Stallone at his best with some jokes in there. I love the Schwarzenegger joke in there.
Yeah, well, that's when they were at war with each other. Still, they were still at war with each other. See, Mustang knows. It was
hilarious.
They were
President
not friends.
Arnold.
They were
there
not
was
friends.
Billboards taken out about it. It was great because the two of them they were at teasing war. They weren't at war. They were friends, but they just take one shot after another at each other. Did not get offended by it. It got to the point I know some people were telling them, "Hey guys, we're getting on the lines of censorship," because that was real back then.
I mean, Mustang, you saw this like I did when it first came out.
Fuck yeah!
You were there. Now, this was not a critical success by any means when it came out. This is something that came and went, and it has achieved its status post its prime release area. The cult status it holds now is far greater than when it was first released.
This is one I actually say might have been the first one we had manipulation at the box office numbers with, because this thing was packed every time I saw or drove past the theater.
Really?
I think they just devalued this one because they didn't want it to be this good.
Well, it criticizes Hollywood. It had a bunch of meta jokes, Hollywood side and burning, making fun of product placement. There's so many meta stuff that I love meta stuff, and there are definitely some things here. And it's what Hollywood tries to do. It creates the society that Hollywood seems to pander to. So of course they don't want it to be successful. I mean, of course, that was the 90s. I can't imagine this movie coming out today.
No. Well, here's the thing. If it came out today, it would just be about today, because we've called it. I already said it. It has been, when 2020 started and everything really went downhill after coup started and everything's falling apart. Everybody said, "Wow, Demolition Man really was the simulator for 2020," and now that's why I call it the 2020 simulator.
Well, they literally fine you for wrongthink.
Yeah, that's the thing. Remember, this takes place. It takes place in this unified section of California between San Diego and Los Angeles, the San Angeles Metroplex, I believe Huxley called it. And you realize that's the Mustang. You would you lived in that area for or last region of the country. That's a large swath of land.
Oh God, yeah.
That's huge. That means that's the size of a small country, essentially, which means
bigger than most small countries.
Yeah, which means Dr. Cocteau was ruling this. Now we're going to talk about because Mustang has some answers to this. I don't, because I always forget to do the research on it, because that's one of my small criticisms of the movie. This takes place in the San Angeles Metroplex. It's California. We know very little about what's going on in the rest of the country, and let alone the rest of the world, from the movie itself. You have to go outside.
It needs to at least imply the rest of the world is like this, or this is an oasis in a terrible world. You gotta at least imply stuff like that.
It mentions federal sometimes. This, I mean, they're clearly the presidency still existed because Schwarzenegger was made. There's the Constitution has over 60 amendments at this point. All kinds of stuff. So the world and country, but we're so localized in this that. One of my overall criticisms has always been I needed a smidge more world building to know what's going on beyond this, even in the rest of California. But we'll get into that.
There isn't.
There isn't?
There isn't. I looked and looked for a long time for it at one time. There's nothing. They said, here it is. This is where we're at, except where we're at. And I actually love that, because then we aren't going, okay, what's going on in the rest of the country? We're going, this is our world that we're living in. It may be fractured. We don't know.
But again, this is just, and I think Jed can agree on this. It's my storyteller desire. I just want a little bit more so I can put a full frame of context into all this, like how this perfect little, basically this little woke society that exists in California is surviving without any sort of tyranny of violence, which is how governments usually are able to maintain control. The monopoly of violence. That's how government maintains control, because they have the monopoly to inflict physical pressure on society to make sure things don't run out of control. And this is a society where violence is gone. They're a bunch of freaking panty-waist pussies with their glow sticks and their be wells and have happy joy feelings.
Their little idioms were so weird.
I know.
Like, I get the whole not touching thing. That made sense. But, like, just the way they talked, it's just like, it makes sense. But and to a certain extent.
You have to realize this, watching this now, after going through the Koof era, where they didn't want you to touch anybody. And
social
you realize,
distancing.
Here we know, social distancing, realize now that this is a world where physical contact is deterred. You can't even, there's no snoo-snoo. There's no snoo-snoo. It's all babies and test tubes. And here's what I love. This clearly is a referendum on left-leaning policies, but somebody in there tried to put in, there's a line where abortion is illegal because it's bad, but they tried to label it as this is a conservative maybe society. But no, this is a far left society, because there's a moment later on, right before Simon Phoenix has Jesse Ventura kill Raymond Cocteau. He goes, Raymond Cocteau, and again, this is we can say this now in relation to something we recently heard in another movie, when we're making this video today. Raymond Cocteau goes, it would be perfect, like an ant colony, and like a pearl, like an iridescent pearl. And now we can say recently with the whole Ant-Man Quantumania line about how ant colonies are great because socialism is great. It's all you realize again. The commentary is there, but it's just.
Yeah, it's subtle. It's more meant as a framing device. And when politics are used as a framing device, I don't have any problem with them. This was way more about the characters between, the rivalry between Phoenix and Spartan. Which I gotta say, calling him John Spartan was just so on the nose. But
I thought you'd appreciate that.
It was very on the nose, and I did very, very much appreciate it. But oh god, what was the thing you said? What was the last point you just made?
We made talking about an ant colony where basically.
Oh, right. The political aspect. So I heard part of a line, but I missed it and didn't get a chance to go back and read it or listen to it. If you guys can clarify this for me.
Sure.
At one point, they mention how there's no point in Phoenix going after money because money is something. Was it abolished?
No, it's a credit system tied to the bio chip that is in everybody's hand, and basically the joke was he can't rent it. He can't rent a room to hide out in, and then the joke is unless he cuts somebody's hand off, let's hope he doesn't figure that out.
Okay. So money still exists, so it's not a
credit. It's a credit system, which may very well be an ESG credit system.
A social, that could make sense. But the whole manipulation of money very much doesn't makes it not a far right conservative deal like they with the abortion line. But that does lead into like a lot of what we just discussed there. My biggest problem with the movie, and I mean, it's kind of twofold. They thought that in 3 years after this movie was made, they'd have high-tech cryo technology.
Yeah.
That I find a little unbelievable. And the fact that he was only in there for 30 years. That I think is the biggest problem with the movie is that it's only 30 years. They act like it's a different universe from 30 years ago. Like I don't know the 90s. I didn't live in the 90s, but I have a very good sense of what existed in the 90s. In the 90s, same thing with the 60s. People remember the 60s. They had a good sense of it. And they didn't do a good enough job at establishing any, like a lot of these people should remember the 90s. I think it needed to be at least 100 years. That would have explained the big technological advances, the societal stuff, people not remembering it. The only other explanation for this would be an erasure of history, which they do say it's discouraged to like the past, but it's not banned. So there's not banning a book. She's able to access a bunch of mementos from the past. If they had done that and like a complete, like we pretend this era doesn't exist, we destroy any evidence of it, then that would justify the whole it's a different world deal because they have no basis to draw that understanding. Like I have an understanding in the 90s because a lot of the 90s has endured. If it didn't endure, that would make sense, but they didn't do that. So I just really struggle with the whole idea of it's only been 30 some odd years. I don't believe you. I don't believe you. But
I think the difference is this. Here, I'm going to defend this point. I agree that it's a little that is a critical point, and it is one of those things. I've seen this movie dozens of times at this point, so that is a sticking point with me too. Especially now where we're so close to 2032. Now we're so close, and there are differences now from the 90s. But it's all on a computer level. Visually, society doesn't really look too much different. The cars look a little different because we went through a stupid phase of making them more aerodynamic because of the attack on fossil fuels and shit like that. I think what happened in 93, because it was still so close to the 80s, when they do something like this, did a dystopian future or going for a future, the 80s used to think poorly about how far it was going to go in the future, what it was going to look like.
No, I mean, Back to the Future has the same problem.
Yeah,
that's a background issue with me. My more issue is people how they think of the 90s. Well, that's my bigger issue.
I think some of the elderly people, like first Assistant Warden and then Warden Smithers, he said he acts one way when he's talking to Huxley on the thing, but then when he's doing business, he's behaving more normally, like he he's someone who came from that era. Or Zach Lamb, the chopper pilot. He behaves normally because he was there. He's clearly at this point in his 70s at that point, so he remembers it. It's the people who are in maybe their 30s and their 40s who may have been either toddlers, infants, or very young at moments where this societal change shifted. It's very easy, I think, to manipulate somebody like that.
Yeah. Well, it didn't happen immediately. We're under the pretext that like right after he went under ice, it was like that's when the corporation started and everything changed. They said a lot went bad for the next 15 years.
Mustang wants to jump in here. Go ahead, Mustang. Jump on in.
There are several points to be made here. First point is the film made it clear that the big one hit. That killed millions.
2010. Yeah, the big quake in 2010.
Yep.
Then they made the next point that there was multiple diseases that came through. And then the final thing that they did really good to give you that impression why people would be like this, there's only, 3 elderly people in the entire film? And the
you're
ward
right.
gets killed off right away. The rest of them are all kids. So they're pretty much saying, here's people 40 or under. They're not going to remember the 90s.
Well, they would at least remember pre-2010 or whatever when the big one hit. When the big one
54, I don't remember the 70s that good.
Well, you would remember enough to know that this is very weird. This is very different. You'd be able to make comparisons.
Well,
and there's historical records.
Today,
they're not banning movies. They're not banning books. They're not banning, like, you'd have to do a lot of work and say, we pretend nothing happened. And so that they'd have to do a lot more work. Like, she publicly displays everything in her office. She doesn't hide that she loves it. She has a Lethal Weapons poster, which I fucking love, in her office. That makes it clear they're not saying it's like kind of looked down upon, but it's not illegal.
It's contraband. Her own guy said that stuff is contraband. The only reason she has it is she's a cop.
She said, they said, isn't that a violation? No, it's not a violation. And other people have stuff like this. Other people are familiar with stuff like this. They need to make it very clear that it's illegal. And if it was contraband, keep it in our house and make it seem like I have to hide this from everyone. Fahrenheit 451
this was a shot
style.
at the police doing things that they could do that nobody else could do. That was what that was about.
Fucking office. I find that it's strange credulity that you'd be able to display illegal contraband in a police station.
Welcome to the 90s and how they viewed the police departments.
If they knew she kept that stuff at her home and didn't do anything about it, all right, that's a good commentary on the way that they saw police. But to publicly display it in an open form and there's no security, they didn't show any security that I saw to get into that room.
Care. Dude, you don't understand the police departments of the 90s and how they look at it. I know Algrim and I have the same background. He could tell you there would be stuff they got away with even in a police department. It was that bad.
They needed to do so much more work to justify the illegal nature of past things.
But that's for you. For people of my age, that was a direct shot at the police department. That was perfectly fine and acceptable for this movie because we all got it. And there he is right there.
it still doesn't make it a good movie or a good writing decision. Just because some people can get it contextually, you still needed to do the work.
It's one of the things that doesn't hold up for your generation that our generation, we looked at and said, yeah, we get it. We know what you're doing here. You're showing what the cops are doing.
And by doing so, they weakened the structural integrity of the film to justify the complete forgetting of the past.
They didn't care about the future. They cared about right then. And that's what it was about. That was what was so great about it.
No. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about how people in the future would view it. I'm talking about in universe, if they're making these changes, if they're saying, oh, let's do a police commentary, but forget that makes it even less believable that people think of the 90s as this other universe that doesn't exist, that was so strange to them in only 30 years, it damages the movie. Even if it was police commentary, especially if it's police commentary, they intentionally put in a joke that damages the structural integrity of the believability that it's only been 30 years and people act like it's a different universe.
Yeah, we didn't care. I can tell you anybody
just because people didn't care doesn't make the movie better. It's still
didn't make it worse either.
There's such a thing as an acceptable flaw. I 100% agree with that, but that doesn't discount the reality that it is a flaw.
You asked, I told you.
Okay,
no.
I'm happy letting you guys debate this. I'm perfectly happy.
If the movie had been set 100 years in the future rather than 30 years, I'd have very little issue with this movie as a whole. 30 years is just not justifiable for the way that the society has developed socially, technologically, and the way that they view the past. It's just not within the realm of possibility, and that strains credulity to a breaking point. If they just said 100 years instead of 30 years, the movie's near damn perfect.
I think it makes it. I'm looking at Jed's picture. I think he's locked in on this just because we're so close to that time period right now.
Yes,
I think
I understand that.
I think that's why someone watching it for the first time can feel, wow, it's really not far off, and we still remember everything that went on. But I see Mustang's point about how the movie does take the steps to tell you what went on in this region. Multiple sexually transmitted diseases that decimated populations. Mm-hmm. The big one in 2010, which very may well, because if they don't talk about it, it's one of the things that we might have to headcanon. That section may be in the freaking ocean for all we know. San Andreas.
I grew up under that threat that we were.
It may be in the freaking ocean for all we know, because back in the 90s there was still that belief of the big one will happen and a chunk of California is going to drift into the ocean. That was a I don't know if it was ever realistic, but it was something that was always put out there. And now we say, yeah, let it fall off and go in the ocean. We want that to happen. Back then, it was just, oh, that would be sad. We don't want that to happen. Now,
I have to ask Adam, because I know he's seen it. Did you catch the Logan's Run nod?
Are we talking about population control?
No, the chick in the TV when you turned it on and she was there naked.
Oh.
It was a Logan's Run nod, word for word almost.
See, I know that chick from other things. When she was in the Kevin Sorbo show Andromeda, she was smoking hot. Wow, that chick's smoking hot. But no, I didn't catch that. No, it's been a while since I watched Logan's Run. I've only seen Logan's Run maybe twice, even though it's on my shelf. I haven't watched it in a really, really, really long time. I bought it and I haven't watched it since I got it. But
another scene would have helped and would have actually further brought home the whole, cop metaphor or joke that you're talking about from the 90s. If, instead of her just going about her day, they made it clear that regular practice, the biggest thing that these people do is hunt down old contraband and make it seem like they're the Iron Fist. But then when they go back to their office, they're using all that contraband themselves. Like having all right, someone's got a DVD they shouldn't have. Let's go grab that DVD. And they go out and they confiscate it. That reinforces cop bad, different rules for you versus me, and done more to establish government bad. I think it would have helped a lot because you need to show instead of just say, oh, isn't this illegal in a fun, cutesy way? No, you need to establish, yes, this is very, very legal, but we're special. They just need to really go to the effort to say everything pre this society banned, totally illegal, can't possess, and everybody's got it for some reason. That a lot of people, more than the cops, had stuff.
In defense of the movie, I'm just going to say I don't think they thought it that much through. That's all.
They just need to justify the time difference and that it's only 30 years. So if they want to make it 30 years, they have to go to the effort to say that that era in human history is erased. But people are talking about history. Regular people know stuff that happened. They're like, oh, you guys did this back in the 90s. How do you know that if history is getting erased? If they know these things, that means these things are readily available, which means you can't act like it's a different universe if it's only 30 years. Well, the mere existence of generally accepted knowledge.
You're putting way too much into this shit. You really
It doesn't justify 30 years. 100 years, we're off to the races. We're good to go. Or they have to erase knowledge. It's one or the other.
They have knowledge there because the whole scene takes place in a museum. We just don't know what's shown in that museum.
Exactly. The museum makes it so that 30 years can't make sense. They're like, yep, this stuff is 30 years ago. Oh my God, it's so ancient. It's like, no, 30 years. We have a damn museum for it. So yeah, this isn't contraband then. The police deal is just a joke that doesn't work anymore if it's readily available in a museum.
We need to move on from the contraband. I know you're hung up on it, but we're going to move on from that.
It breaks cohesion. Just make it 100 years and we're good. 30 years is not enough for society to forget unless you go to extensive work, and they did not show extensive work.
We know what's going to take points off the movie for Jed now. We know exactly what that is.
I think I know.
So we need to move on, though. I want to move on because taking that aside, everything else, let's talk. We have to talk about the characters because that's where I like to go with. We'll get back to John Spartan. I have to talk about what is my favorite character, Wesley Snipes, Simon Phoenix, the one of the greatest villains of all time. I dare anybody to counter me on this, just because he's Snipes. This is the peak of Snipes' popularity. He got, I believe, when did Blade come out? I think it came out shortly after this.
95.
Yeah, it came. I mean, this is the ascension of Wesley Snipes when he was in everything. He
98.
98. Okay, no, wow. Okay, we really are far away then. But
I have a confession, and I'm nearly 100% sure this is true. This is my first Wesley Snipes movie.
What?
Well, this is a good introduction to Wesley Snipes then.
Yeah.
Because this is Wesley Snipes at his best. Simon Phoenix executed as just anarchy incarnated. He is just a force of nature. He is evil. There is nothing redeeming about him, but he is evilly charismatic. Every scene he is in is just perfect. There's not a moment of Simon Phoenix that is wrong in this movie. From when he gets introduced in the beginning, where all you see are his two different colored eyes, then he grabs the skull pommel knife and just punctures all the oil cans, and then his first interaction with John Spartan. Everything is just so full of emotion and giddy, and he's giddy with his evil, and that's why it's fun. I mean, Mustang, I love it. I love it.
There is only one thing in the movie that absolutely, when I heard it, I went, no, Jeffrey Dahmer. I love this guy. Jeffrey Dahmer's in Wisconsin. You idiot.
Maybe he got transferred. I don't know.
Yeah, when they made the first cryo unit, made him the first test.
There you go. They made the first cryo prison. They transferred him there. There you go.
Yeah, that.
But I heard that and I was like, oh, you God, who did that? But I mean, the line's perfect.
But it's just he has all my favorite lines in the movie. I mean, right now, my subtitle on my frame here. What's my boggle? When he's he's in the museum, guy comes up. What is your boggle? My boggle? There's something about that. I just love it. And then 2 seconds later, he throws the guy through the freaking window.
What's your weight? Never mind.
Never mind. Where's the future? Where are the phaser guns? Oh, here we go. It's just everything's great. I mean, Jed, how do you? I know you love a good villain.
Oh
I know
yeah,
you love a good villain.
He was phenomenal. Well, the thing that a lot of movies take issue with is when they make villains, they like the chaotic side. They're always trying to make a chaotic villain, and it just doesn't work. There's got to be a method to the madness, or they do it so poorly in modern movies. So when I found out there was just this chaotic force in this movie, I'm just like, oh, please don't be a modern chaotic villain. Be a true chaotic villain. And Wesley Snipes delivered so well. Everything he did made sense in its own twisted way. And that's what's important, is you can still see why they're making these decisions. It's not just, you know what, there's no reason for me to kill this guy, but I'm going to kill it just so the audience knows I'm evil. You got to make sure the audience knows I'm evil. It's like, no, the performance just sells it so well. It's like, he just genuinely wants to kill this person. Like, they sell it so beautifully well with everything he does. And he's the perfect antithesis to this society. And I think that's the most important thing about his character, is contextually the comparisons that are possible because of him. Because stepping back from the movie, they don't really address it in the movie, but that's what's great about it, is you can carry it on for discussions later. Is a lot of people could use his chaotic nature and how he disrupts the society as a counterpoint to say, maybe the society is exactly what we need. He is so evil that maybe we need complete control to counteract him. And the movie does address it a little bit at the end, when he's like, oh, don't be chaotic like you sewer people, and don't be completely ordered like you city people. You got to find a balance, but I'm sure you'll figure it out. That's as far as the movie went to address it. Yeah. But that's why I think he works so well in the movie, Phoenix, because he is the opposite of everything this society represents. And even John Spartan, he does address it actually in another point too, is find a psycho to catch a psycho.
It's send a maniac to catch a maniac.
Yep, exactly. It's kind of the same idea. It's like, does he belong in this society? Is he a counterpoint to it? And that's it. There's a lot of interesting points because, yeah, there's the chaotic force of Phoenix that's the counterpoint to society, and John can be used as a counterpoint to the society as well. But his morality and his honor
He's
is
the order aspect. He's the aspect of order, but order in control, not the tyranny of authoritarianism that will make you do it. He's going to keep you in line, but once you've been kept in line, if you haven't broken the law, you're free to do what you want, as opposed to the Cocteau plan, as Dennis Leary puts it, which is to basically end up being a 47-year-old virgin sitting in a diaper on a porch singing "I'm an Oscar Mayer wiener."
Hi, Bob.
Yeah, it's just a lot of interesting things, and I think this movie, as much as like the framing of the society is really interesting and fascinating, would have been hurt with a more traditional villain. Like if the mayor had been the ultimate villain rather than a justification for the plot or someone inciting incident type character, I think this movie would have been a lot worse. Like if John had been purely going against him, like a calculating villain, like I just want order. I don't think a lot of the great points that this movie had to make would have been made as well, and it wouldn't have stuck with people as much because we need that contrast, and Phoenix is the perfect contrast. So I was glad when the mayor died because
when Cocteau, when like I said, when he has Jesse Ventura kill Cocteau, it's a beautiful thing because at one point John says, don't think you can control this guy. You're going to lose control of Phoenix. He will get you. He will destroy you. And he does, because it's the perfect thing. No matter how hard an authoritarian power tries to control every aspect, you can't control chaos. Chaos will always overtake you. And to your point earlier, Phoenix's actions are so perfect this way. His initial escape after he destroys those cops I love that scene when the cops confront him while he's at the computer terminal. At first, he doesn't give a shit. He's ignoring them. He's making fun of them. It's until the guy says, or else. And then it just suddenly, he shifts from just being nonchalant to turns. And it's like, oh, now I'm going. That's the decision. The chaotic decision. I'm ignoring you because I can just get away from this. But now you've annoyed me too much. I'm pissed off. I'm now going to kill every single one of you. And he does it. And then when it's done, to your point about just doing something, not just doing something in a modern thing where they do it to, oh, look, he's just bad. When they zoom out to watch it after he destroys the initial camera, they watch him. What's he doing? Why is he standing the glow rod in the battery coolant, in the capacity gel? What's that going to accomplish? They don't comprehend. It's a great show don't tell moment. They don't comprehend that he's doing it just to cause the explosion, to cause panic, so that he can get out of there or whatever, or just to do it because he wants to do it.
Oh, he
not
wanted
because,
to.
Not because there's multiple things involved that he wants to do it, but it's also a way for him to cause mass panic and disappear into the crowds.
Beautifully done.
It's a great thing, and there's a lot of symmetry moments in this movie in terms of visual stuff and dialogue and moments, and that's what makes it great too. But that's why I love Simon Phoenix, because he just epitomizes chaos unapologetically as just a villain who you both love and hate at the same time. You love it because you're enjoying it, but you despise what he does because he's evil. You don't want him to win, but you want him to be on the screen. And that is the perfect recipe for a villain. You want more of it. And again, every dialogue line is great. Now I know you. You're an evil Mr. Rogers. Will you kill him, please?
I love it. And you do kind of skirt around another thing that I question about the movie, and this is purely a thing that Mustang might be able to clear up, that I do find intriguing, but also I wonder if it is an issue or maybe it's not. It's very interesting that in a futuristic society like this that is so dystopian, so authoritarian, that it doesn't have a strong police arm or military arm. Like normally in a society like this, you have to have a strong enforcer type force, for lack of a better phrase, and just someone who's instills fear. And it's kind of interesting how the police are completely incompetent. I even wonder to a certain extent what they even do. Like they're so surprised by everything. They need their little pads, which are great for comedy and great, interesting little things. But at the same time, they have all these problems. They have the sewer people. It's made to look like a picturesque society, but that's all a lie. So how are they able to maintain the facade of picturesqueness without a strong enforcement arm?
I think it's brainwashing. I think it's the indoctrination.
It is fascinating. It is fascinating, and I do like the brainwashing aspect, but I do struggle with it a little bit. Like, if brainwashing was the thing, if that was so effective, then there's the sewer people.
It's the Princess Bride brute squad. There are several scenes in the movie where you see the police are needed. It's pure brute force that comes, but we don't know what they do after they've taken care of it. They never told us, which that is one of my pet peeves is, okay, we know you caught a few of these guys at Taco Bell. What are you going to do with them now that you've caught them? And we don't have anything to tell us.
And what I think also is that everybody in society, even the what do they call them? The scabs. I think they are as ineffectual as the police because they can't really fight either. I think everybody is I think it's an equal level of incompetence.
And that goes back to my age thing. Not one of them appears to be over 40. So
yeah. I mean, at one point when after the initial, because when they're all, one of the guys during the Taco Bell fight, one guy's he's twirling a couple of bars, but it's all flash and no thing because then John just knocks him out instantly. And when he grabs the one guy at the end, he just goes, "Please stop," because these people aren't violent. They're not really violent. Yeah, some of them have guns, but I think Edgar Friendly is the only one who actually knows how to do anything.
Yeah,
he's the only one, and played brilliantly by Dennis Leary. That was that the couple scenes he in at the time. That's pure Dennis Leary. When he's doing his rant about wanting to be covered in Jell-O and run down the street just because he feels like it, the extra standing next to him was laughing, and it made me wonder how many takes did they have to go through to keep having other people from laughing too hard from whatever variation of a rant that he did, because that in the day that was Dennis Leary's thing, the rant, and it was beautiful. I mean, you ever heard the song "I'm an Asshole" by Dennis Leary?
Mm-mm.
Oh, that's a classic. You have to go into the middle of that, and he goes to this rant about why we're so strong, why I'm an asshole, why America's an asshole, because we got the bombs. That's right, we got the effing bombs. He just goes on and on and on for like 2 minutes. It's pure Leary, and that what we see there is pure Leary, where it's just encapsulating everything.
I love this philosophy. There's like I mentioned with Phoenix, there's so many great contrasts. There's just so many different opinions and different approaches that can be used to justify a lot of different stances. Like someone could use the chaotic nature of Phoenix, the chaotic nature of the scabs to justify this society. And inversely, it's just creates some interesting points of conversation.
I wouldn't say the scabs are rebellious. I would classify them more as not chaotic. I'll call them rebellious because they want, because to quote Friendly, he wants freedom of speech. He wants independence, and he lives down there. Well, I don't know if they were hippies. They didn't. I don't know if I'd call them hippies. They just wanted not to be controlled by the Cocteau indoctrination.
Yeah,
I mean down
there's so many interesting things.
Rat burgers.
Every character, every group of people is an interesting concept and interesting contrast to all the other groups. Like, rarely have I seen a society in a film or television show that just has so many different various combinations and contrasts that each deserve their own breakdown for the way they're structured, their philosophies. They have philosophies. And throughout this movie, I don't know how familiar you guys are with this other franchise, but it seemed like the good version of the Divergent series. I'm not a fan of those. I've seen the movies. They're not good. They're really not good. But it has a lot of the same ideas, just executed so very poorly. So the whole time I'm thinking about it, and it's like, you know, they want you to think in Divergent, you're divided up into groups based on your primary emotion. Like, are you dauntless? Are you this or you're that? And then you're placed in society accordingly. And they want you to think, oh, all these soft-spoken people, they're an interesting concept with all the violent people from Dauntless. But it ends up being a fart in the wind. It never actually means anything. But in this, the comparisons matter. They're interesting. You can almost use any combination of them to justify any position. Like, there's very few right answers to be found besides compromise, and that's what John comes to at the end.
That's the key point. It's all about one. I think that you stumbled upon an excellent point in this that I hope that we get to. Yes, this is an exposition on what happens now. We can honestly say what happens if woke leftism goes too far. Mm-hmm. This is their society where everybody is an ant colony and cocktail. You can't swear, you can't enjoy things. Everything is regulated completely and perfectly, and everybody's been indoctrinated to be docile. As opposed to then you have the free thinkers who are pushed into the sewers, who want to just be left alone, or they want the choice. They want to have freedom of choice, freedom of speech, but they go too far where they themselves have no unity because they don't have any sort of leadership structure. But then we get back to the past. You have two transplants from the past. You have John Spartan. You have Simon Phoenix. Phoenix, who is chaos, to Spartan's order. And like you said, it's a great justification of that. This is what happens to you. Everything is too far. There has to be a middle ground. It is the belief that whatever team you play for, pure version of what a pure anything is not good. Mm-hmm. There has to be a little of everything. Mm-hmm. There has to be. I mean, listen, we know it's pretty clear where I lean politically, but my beliefs, especially when it comes to fiscal natures. But I understand there has to be certain safety net things in place in society, because when properly cared for and executed and properly taken care of, they do provide a good support system. And that's definitely not something that is in the realm of my own personal beliefs, but I understand it. So you need elements from all sides to do it. All right, go ahead, Joe.
Well, yeah, you're 100% right. And that's why this isn't a politically divisive movie. Like, I would not call this a woke movie because it's not championing any pure ideology. And I think that's what makes it a interesting comparison to modern movies, is they're always trying to champion a pure ideology. And then they take movies like this. They take other things from the past and like, oh, stuff has always been political. Star Trek, it's always been political. But just like Star Trek, just like Demolition Man, it's about the art of compromise. It's not about pure ideology. That's what the difference is. That's what makes the modern stuff bad and the previous political commentary, at least the majority of it, good and interesting and thought-provoking. That's the most important thing. This movie is so thought-provoking in the ways that you said. And I would just change one thing that you said, Adam, with the transplants from the past. Pretty much every person, every group of people is a pure ideology, except for John. John, he's not just order. He is a chaotic individual. He's a violent, he's all over the place. He's a devil-may-care hothead to a certain extent, but he does have a balance between order and chaos. He's the epitome of how the society is supposed to work. He's the compromise. He's a person of compromise between his desire for order and his capability for chaos. So that's really good. Yeah, he embodies the point of the story, at least in my opinion. He embodies that what we talked about, the compromise.
Let's shift and talk about Stallone as Spartan.
Hold on, I got to say something, because Jed just nailed something. As somebody who wasn't alive at this time, that was Southern California, and really California in a nutshell. They wanted compromise, a lot of being left alone. These scabs were the homeless, because they were everywhere. And what we see today is nothing. This was a big topic back in that time because it was on the news. Believe me, I was blasted with it. There's so many contrasts, and you picked it all up and said it perfectly and nicely so that people could understand it. But that is what this was kind of making fun of and trying to bring to light at the same time. There was some political motivation to it. They wanted to bring a light to it, but how did you do it at the time? Because we didn't have the woke mentality today. We didn't have people going out onto the streets, and
the contrast wasn't there.
No, the contrast wasn't there.
Yeah, now it is.
But it's so neat to see Jed, who was not alive at that time, pick that up.
Yeah. So again, let's shift. Then we mentioned, to Jed's point about how John Spartan is and that's a really great point. He is the epitome of the compromise. He is the essence of it. This is peak Stallone right here.
Yes.
This might be my favorite Stallone performance.
He is in arguably the best shape of his life in this movie, physically. He manages to balance some good serious moments with that kind of Stallone action movie moment where he can get a little corny, a little cheesy, especially towards the end, a couple lines. But he balances it really well where you're not pulled out of it, and he's delivering great Stallone action.
Mm-hmm.
It's what you expect. He knew exactly what he was supposed to do at this point in time. I am Sylvester Stallone. I am one of the 2 or 3 biggest action stars in the world, next to Arnold and whoever was third. I mean, he and Arnold they would swap 1 and 2 all the time, and third could be anywhere from like Bruce Willis.
It was Bruce Willis.
Bruce Willis, but then Jean-Claude Van Damme took.
Yeah, that's who I was thinking.
Number 3 was in rotation, but from the late 80s through the 90s, it was Stallone and Schwarzenegger. But he knew exactly what to do. I'm here to deliver an action movie. I'm here to do that. I'm here to make my character likable. I'm here to just be. He's the everyman. Mm-hmm. He is the everyman in this too. He's relatable. One of my favorite scenes is when Lenina is doing her research on him, and they're showing old video clips. And the reporter and one reporter's going, "How can you justify destroying $1 million complex to save a little girl whose ransom was only $25?" And the little girl goes, "Fuck you, lady." And he goes, "Good answer." He's like, "Good answer." I mean, he's the everyman where it's like, yeah, I'm going to save a little girl. Fuck your giant corporation resource boss or whatever. I'm going to do what's right. So we can relate to him instantly. We can relate to him that he's there. He's there to catch the maniac. He's there to do it. And and he gets those great Stallone stills. At this point, he's perfected it. Where the cameras zoom in, he'll put on the beret. He'll have that pose with the gun up. It's just, he nails it perfectly. And he delivers, and Jed, I know you can appreciate it, he delivers believable action.
Absolutely.
The fight scenes, and that's why I want to jump back to Phoenix for a minute. What I really love is that in the beginning, in the opening scene, in the prologues, essentially the prologues, we don't get to the title until after that. He dominates Phoenix in their fight. In Phoenix, he's a crazy psychotic, and he would need tools and weapons and threats and trickery to win. And you think, and when you first see this, think, oh man, he's going to be our foil. How's he going to? How is Wesley going to stand up to Stallone in this? Because he just kicked his ass. No, then he gets the behavioral treatment to become the perfect weapon.
Well, it's not just behavioral; it's physical as well.
Yeah, that's
clearly super. Next. Yeah, clearly superhuman.
Whatever they did to him, they did stuff and made. I mean, he is 10 times stronger than when he goes in. Spartan even says that because at one point when he's attacking the police cars, he one hand throws a cop out of the car, and also then you have the great the great excuse to then have Wesley Snipes go full martial arts in this. And what's really great is that once they're in the future, Simon Phoenix is more than Spartan can handle in their one-on-one fights. Guns aside, when they have to go at it, he is way tougher. He could take more of a hit. He could put on more of a beating. In their final battle in the cryo freeze chamber, he kicks Spartan's ass. He dominates that fight. Yeah, John gets a few good shots in, but Simon Phoenix dominates that fight. And that's why I love the comparison of, because that's why this is also a great action movie. For a long time in movies, especially in Stallone and Schwarzenegger movies, these guys are these unimaginable badass heroes. And you wonder, how is the villain going to stand up to them? And you can count, and Mustang, you can probably corroborate this. A lot of movies where the eventual villains, they don't stand up to Schwarzenegger or Stallone's heroes in this. It's a very iffy fight sometimes. Very rare do you get it.
The only one that I think would stand up and close to this one is Cobra.
Cobra, yeah, but that's a very good example. But a lot of other movies, Stallone and Schwarzenegger, everybody's paper people to them.
Yeah, they're just easy. They're just a walkthrough.
There's the final boss fight except for Predator. That's like the Stallone. That's an alien. That's an alien. Yeah, I know. But most of the time they're paper people. They swat them aside. Commando, Schwarzenegger owns the end of that one. In Rambo, I mean, Rambo owns everybody in Rambo. They catch the Rambo joke in the movie too, in the museum.
Oh yeah,
or this Rambo. Yeah. Anyway, but what happens in this one is Simon Phoenix is a pure counterpart in terms of a not pure. Let me rephrase that. He is more than that. He's too much, as I said, for Spartan to handle.
And I love that. Drago. He's Ivan. That's the only other one that Stallone would have ever had a problem in any of his movies.
Yeah.
One-on-one, Ivan and him. That was so good.
Yeah, because once he got training, he took out Clubber Lang, no problem. Once he got retrained.
Yep.
No Clubber Lang. But yeah, so that's the thing. I like a villain that makes the hero work for it. And that's why I appreciate it. And again, the choreography is just great. Stallone, like I said, he doesn't go outside. He sticks to boxing moves. He sticks to grappling moves. He's not doing anything crazy. He goes with what he knows. While Wesley is just doing kicks and punches and cool moves and shit like that because he knows how to do that. It's executed just right. And that makes it, to Jed's point earlier, makes it believable. You're not pulled out of this. You're in it. You're enjoying it. And I mean, Jed, how do you feel about the whole action of the movie?
Oh, the action was beautiful. At some points, it did get a little bit too over the top, but in a really fun way, like the one I mentioned at the beginning, him bungee jumping out of a helicopter, shooting people as they went. That was just wild. But for the majority, it is 90s. Oh, I was there for it. I was grinning and laughing through it all. But especially the end fight, like you're talking about, the choreography is beautiful. And the thing I talk a lot about in my reviews for modern day stuff is modern fight scenes. As much as basic choreography might be flashy, might be cool, they never do dynamic fights anymore. Which by that, I mean, like using your environment, acting like your environment exists, picking up objects, climbing on walls, jumping level to level, just a dynamic environment. Without it, even a fancily choreographed fight scene can come off very static. This movie, especially the end credit scene, but pretty much every single fight scene, it utilized every aspect of every one of the beautifully created sets. I kind of felt bad that they were destroying so many beautiful sets. And that, I think, is what makes the futuristic aspect of it so good, is it all feels believable. It all looks real. Any CGI that was there, I didn't notice any CGI with the exception of the effect that they use over his body. And there was a few points where I'm like, all right, that's clearly a body double for Stallone.
I only catch it once during the fight in the earthquake preservation thing. I catch it once, Stallone's stuntman. Other than that, and I am really sensitive to when the stuntman there, I didn't catch it. Now, nobody did stunts for Wesley. Wesley's doing all his own.
He did on some.
I wasn't talking about stuntmen, but that works for what I was talking about. Was like the models at the beginning when he's being cryo freezed. There was a couple
you gotta be careful. A lot of dick in this cryo freeze.
There was a lot of
penis.
But it's just like, that's a rubber man right there. Yeah. Like it was a few times where I'm like, that's clearly
where they
rubber.
throw Cocteau into the fire. That's a mannequin, but
it's
mannequin. Very slight.
It's not bad. Yeah. For the 90s, it is beautiful and ages so well from a technical aspect, and even like the one effect that was bad.
I want to bring up a
one
point.
Was just epic.
I want to bring up a point that I believe it was either yesterday or the day before. It might have been on Open Bar. It might have been in F&T last night, where everybody's talking about budgets on what these budgets mean today compared to back then. Back then, you had X amount of money to get your movie done. I mean, you're planning a giant explosion scene. I mean, when we were watching Tropic Thunder, Jed, the giant explosion scenes, the commentary on that, how much money it takes to set that up. You get one shot to do it. They have one shot to do a lot of these things, so they're going to make sure it's nailed. So they're going to do right. Or when you have these sets, like you said, these really great sets, when you go through the combat and everything's going to get destroyed, you can't really rebuild it or set it up, especially if you have to edit together different parts. It has to look the same and be the same. So they respected working within their means, within the budget. And that's the difference. Now it's like, oh, we'll fix it in post. Oh, we'll CGI this here and there.
I hate that mentality.
That's today's mentality.
I hate it so much.
Back then, that wasn't their mentality. That was, we have to get this right now. That's why, again, you made a great point. I like, just like with the cryo facility fight, the fight in the earthquake preservation in the museum, they use the environment. At one point, it's a cheesy ass line, but Stallone, Josh Martin grabs the TV. You're on TV as he swings the TV into him, and he beats him with a TV a couple times. It's just it hits the points. and you're not pulled out of it at all.
Yeah.
And you have a good time. You're not thinking about it. You're just enjoying well choreographed action that while wild in terms of the gunplay, classic 90s, 80s gunplay, everybody shooting, rarely anybody getting hit in the wild spray. And in the end, the guns are ineffective. We have to get the fisticuffs to get it done. But it's fine because you go from wild fight scene to wild gunplay scene to a well-placed car chase scene. This movie has a car chase scene.
It was beautiful.
Which is a lost art. Now, I don't even know if the Fast franchise.
No, Fast doesn't do it
It's
good.
all CGI now.
Yeah. I mean,
all CGI.
Yeah, that was real. It was a real car chase scene that they choreographed together, and you don't get that anymore, and that's why it's just lovely.
Well,
it's lovely. Go ahead.
Well, like I mentioned at the beginning, I've seen a lot of stuff that now I understand was taking inspiration from this movie. Like I can see so many ties to other franchises, other properties, and be like, they've seen Demolition Man. They know what Demolition Man is, from Divergent doing it in a crappy way to Futurama. I was getting so much Futurama. Like the cryo freeze, the way the future was set up, the way that they have like buried versions of New York City or in Futurama versus LA here in a museum, like just so many. I was like, Futurama fucking loves Demolition Man. Oh, it clearly loves that movie. The writers behind it love it. But it's just really interesting to see how influential this movie was, despite like what Mustang said, it's rather unimpressive box office that might have been manipulation, and it's just everyone knew what it was. It was so impactful, and now it's even more impactful with the advent of the 2020s. It's just so interesting, the meta aspect of this movie. That's something I always like to discuss, is the impact of a movie, how it came to be, and just what it means, what some of the external factors of it are. And this one has some of the most fascinating. And like you said, from even its action, a lot of the action can be tied to other stuff and seen as inspiration for so many great other movies as well. So
we've danced around her, but now we're going to talk about her. Sandy Bullock as Lena Huxley. Now, this was the first time I had seen Sandra Bullock in something, and damn, did she do it for me in this movie.
They predicted leggings.
They did.
Oh, she was wearing she was wearing yoga pants throughout the whole thing.
This might be controversial, but she's my favorite character in the movie.
Nothing wrong with that.
I love her, and it's my favorite performance from her. This
is the only movie that I own that she's in. I don't own any other Sandra
normally
Bullock
she
movies.
doesn't. She comes off as very restrained in a lot of her performances and a little bit haughty. This one, she just was having fun, and you could see that, and there was an innocence to it. And her
that's
innocence,
Lenita's charm. Her innocence.
This is one of her first movies.
I was going to say, this is kind of the movie that kind of gave her a spotlight, and her career moved forward from this movie. Because again, I'd never seen her before, and I was like, "Damn, this chick's hot." And
if I'm going to say my favorite Sandra Bullock movie, it's The Blind Side, hands down.
Really?
Yes.
Well, because of the realism of it, the real life story of it.
It's a real life story. She portrayed the characters so well. Everything about it was believable. The Tully family, everything, and well, Taco Bell.
We'll end on. I want to save the gimmickry of the society for the end part. But let's finish.
Well, I do want to see. It'd be funny to see which movie is going to be more prone to cancellation by the current woke mob: Demolition Man or The Blind Side, because they fucking hate The Blind Side. So
all right. So I want to. So Lena Huxley, like you said, that's her innocence is what makes her charming, and Sandra Bullock pulls off a perfect balance of someone who takes her job seriously, but at the same time is wide-eyed and doesn't get it at times, especially. And I love it. I love her. Let's call it Lenina-isms, where she just gets a saying not quite right. The best one has to be, we got a problem. All right, he'll be back, I'm sure. The best one has to be when they're going into the underworld to search for Edgar Friendly or search for Phoenix. They pull up the manhole and she goes, "All right, let's go down there and blow these guys. Blow these guys away." Whatever. So she has no idea what she just said because physical sexual contact isn't a thing anymore. And she has no idea what the implications of a beautiful woman saying that. It's just, again, and it's awesome. And it's great.
Well, that one was great. My personal favorite is after they met the mayor for the first time, John meets the mayor for the first time. She says that lick his ass
Yeah.
instead of kick his ass.
Willie Brown.
The Lenina isms are great, but also, again, she is the window for us to how weird the society is. Through her, we learned that the society that doesn't have real music anymore. It doesn't have
commercials.
It doesn't have art anymore. It doesn't have fun anymore. We mentioned it. Their favorite station is Jingles. It plays ancient jingles that are in our time, even today. You want to pull your hair out because they're chalkboard. They're nails on a chalkboard. We listen to them, but no, they want to hear Armor Hot Dogs. They want to hear the Green Giant theme. They think that that's music, or TV themes. Like one point when the seduction's going to happen in her apartment where they're going to have sex, they're playing freaking Love Boat. They're playing freaking Love Boat. Now, hey, some of those 80 themes, I could rock out to those all day long. We know that. I got claimed on streams for trying to play those because I love them so much. But she's the window of the society, and she doesn't understand that her perception of not only what the past was is wrong, and it's the cheesy, corny aspect of it, but also how cheesy and corny their reality that they're in is. And that's why Lena is a great character, because she's that window into it. And that's why she fascinates me. Add anything? Bad transition. My fault. Bad transition.
No, you're 100% right. Her innocence aspect is a really interesting way, and that's an important aspect of world building too, because they pretty much establish she seems ordinary. This is pretty staple. The way that she looks at the world is pretty staple, and so that helps world building. But another aspect of it, it does help the thematic stuff that we mentioned earlier, the commentary that we mentioned earlier, because she's already struggling with the compromise, because she's trying to follow the rules. She's always, the rule follower, but then she needs to know about the past. She researches obsessively about types of cars from the 70s.
Yeah.
She's obsessive about the past, and it just creates this little interesting thing. She's constantly at war with herself because she wants to know the past, but it's never fully within reach, and it completely goes against the entire society and the person she seems to be.
But she's also a great portrayal of a strong female character who has complete agency, has nothing stolen from her. She has earned her place, and she shows that she has a legitimate reason to be a police lieutenant. Prior to the shit going bad, at one point when they're trying to clear out the museum, she's yelling at orders over the little computer, and Spartan goes, yeah, because she has that thing. But at the same time, she knows that, like you said, there is something wrong here. And when it's presented to her, she doesn't have that reactionary indoctrination thing of, oh, no, you can't be right. You can't, what you're saying about Dr. Cocteau. No. She's open to it. She's not she's not a woke Karen who's going to yell at you and demean you and debase you. In fact, she worships John Spartan because she sees in him what a real cop should be. And she respects that, and she doesn't demean. The only time that there's real conflict is the sex scene, because that is that perfect portrayal of a clash of different time periods in this movie, where there's nothing wrong with little kissing, little this and that, but to her it's disgusting, and she's reviled by it. And it's a great example of all she does is demand he leave. But you just did the pose where she stamps her foot, points, leaves, and what does the man do? Oh, he respects her wishes. He leaves. He doesn't try and force the issue, because to our point we've already made, John Spartan has morals. He's not Simon Phoenix, and because at one point and I think they make this a point to show it when they're showing Simon Phoenix's crimes.
Yep, I did notice.
Grape is right there. I don't think that's done without purpose to show that Phoenix would not have taken over, but John Spartan, he is a real man.
Mm-hmm.
He's respectful of women. He will not push the issue. He walks away. And then because he felt bad, he gives her a gift the next day, which is the whole joke about the behavioral programming. Your genetics make you a seamstress. But Phoenix comes out. He's 10 times stronger, has computer skills, he has all the stuff, and I have to knit? I'm a seamstress? What the hell?
That scene is doing so much. I just want to mention that scene real fast because it's doing world building, it's doing character building, it's doing exposition, it's doing so much. And then there's chemistry, it's building their relationship.
Yeah.
There's so many just that one scene. I love that scene because it's not just, oh, I can knit that. Isn't that cute? It's weird. It's not weird for weird's sake. It's doing so much.
And it starts before that when he does the knitting. Because like you said, that scene is all show don't tell. First, you see a really great pair of tits. Really great pair of tits. But then as he looks at it, we see his behavior on, and he just unconsciously starts to do the process while watching Phoenix's confrontation with Cocteau and how Phoenix didn't kill him. And it's all knowing that we're smart enough to see that Spartan's putting together some pieces here.
That was also one of the funniest scenes in the movie because they thought that laser discs would survive. That was the only thing that they got from the 90s that still kept going.
And short time later,
first thing abandoned.
And honestly, it's 3 years later, 3-4 years where DVDs took over. About 3 years from that, 3-4 years later, DVDs
there is
came
a more powerful scene in the movie when Lena wants to look up where John's daughter is, and John realizes what he is compared to what the future is. He had to search into his soul and see what he was inside, and did he want to bring that on his daughter? Because if his daughter
grew up in this society, she was probably a toddler when he left.
I think they gave her age, and
I don't remember her age. All I know is that
she was young.
All I know is that she was a small child, and that we know his wife died in 20, but his wife never was angry at him because he says he was awake. And I want to talk about that for a second, which is some people might say it's pretty. It's pretty quick for him to say, I want to have sex with Lenina. No, he was awake for his entire imprisonment in the cryo freeze, the 30-year nightmare, he called it. And he remembers his wife banging on the ice. So his wife still loved him, but he had time to accept that his world is gone, which is why I have no problem with him initiating a relationship with Lenina, because he's processed his life.
Yep.
And it's amazing he's not insane, honestly. If you are awake during that, it's amazing he's not crazy. But I guess that's the strength of that. I guess that speaks to his moral, his not his moral, I'm sorry, his mental stability is the word I wanted, mental stability. But all these scenes are also great commentaries. And again, it's through Lenina that we see that a lot of these contrasts of the different society and times come through. And it's great.
Well,
but then, okay, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, just on that track, you mentioned earlier that she's completely justified in being a strong, independent woman. There's a scene that I think is more important than even John recognizing it, and it's at the beginning of the movie, and there's a prop that justifies it. I love that it's here. I love that it exists because, as we know, we've done it. We love Lethal Weapon. The Lethal Weapons poster is important because that means she's seen previous movies, and that means she's seen how police work is actually done. And so when she's tracking down Phoenix, I love how she figures out how to and everyone's watching her like, whoa, how are you doing this? Because she has critical thinking. She has common sense. And that's been established because she reads, she watches movies. And that's kind of the war that I was talking about previously, is in establishing that war between the past and the present with her. They're able to establish that she has critical thinking. It justifies how intelligent she is, and it justifies a lot of what she does. And that Lethal Weapons poster, as small as it is important to say she has access to movies. It's not just crap.
Well, she learned to fight watching Jackie Chan movies.
Yeah,
that one does cringe for Julie. It's a joke.
But I want to talk about that scene, though. I want to talk about that fight scene. It's a legitimate fight scene because what does she first do when she gets an opening? She kicks the guy in the nuts. And then at one point, she repeatedly kicks him in the nuts before kicking him in the head. That's how she should fight. You go for the weakest point on the dude, the great equalizer.
80s movies would tell you that.
The great equalizer. So again, that's a legitimate fight. You can't complain about that because she fights like she's supposed to. She goes for the head. She's not trying to punch him in the body. She goes for the nuts. She goes for the legs. She goes for the head. And those are all the weak points to equalize it. And then she does the balls to the walls part of grabbing the gun, which she's probably never fired a gun before in life, but instinctively pulls it and shoots. And then she has that great moment of grappling with the fact that I just took a life. And I think, again, it's her innocence.
So important. Yeah, you highlight that because a lot of modern movies don't do this. Like, yes, you don't have to spend a whole lot of time grappling with the consequences of decisions or big violence or anything like that. You just need to reference, hey, this character will be grappling with it. And it's important for her character that she just even hesitates. A modern movie wouldn't have done that.
It's a follow-through from an earlier conversation after the Taco Bell fight where Spartan's going, it's not just, we don't do violence for fun. It's not fun beating people up. Okay, sometimes it is. But he explains how it's just sometimes it's the last resort.
It's necessary.
And it's necessary sometimes to maintain that order because sometimes, in the case of Assignment Phoenix, there's no compromise because, again, during the escape from the underground, I forget, Benjamin Bratt, I think it's Benjamin Bratt's character, tries to go like this to Phoenix, just stupidly puts his hand out to try and have him become he grabs his arm, nearly breaks it, beats the crap out of him, runs away. It's the understanding there is no compromise with evil, and the violence will be necessary. All right, so just to close out here, let's just have a commentary on the silliness in some of these things. We talked about the jingles, our radio station. Taco Bell wins the franchise wars.
There's an absurdity aspect to it, and that's important for the world building. It's not just comedy.
That's a nightmare scenario for me. That's a nightmare. Taco Bell's the only restaurant. That's a nightmare scenario for me. That's not good. That's not good. But then
I think that's Ryan. He'll never get an order right.
I think that's one of the most important aspects that it gets people to say, at least I've never said it before since I've never seen the movie, but you guys said it's a 2020 similarity. I think that aspect of it is one of the reasons why people say it so fervently, is because there was so much absurdity. Like, if you'd watched this movie in the 90s, you probably thought, there's no way people can be that dumb.
Yep.
And then the 2020s happened. It's like, oh, wow, we can
just
be
look
that
at the
dumb.
fashion. That's the way they're dressed. This pseudo weird Asian fusion thing. What are you all wearing? At one point, after John Spartan, when John's in his apartment for the first time, he just basically mocks what he's wearing as he leaves the bathroom. It's ridiculous.
It's its own genre at the same time. Like, yes, I mentioned we've seen a lot of dystopian movies. We've seen a lot of totalitarian movies. But I can't think of a single other movie that is absurd totalitarianism. That's an actual thing, absurdity in authoritarianism. I've never seen that before. And it's such an interesting concept because it reflects, because totalitarianism, authoritarianism, and brainwashing can affect people's mental state and devolve society, as we saw, and that devolves people's mental acuity. And so absurdity would be something that goes hand in hand with that. So it actually makes sense, absurdity going with a devolution in critical thinking.
Well, yeah, look at it. There's a lot of statements that some characters make that you realize just you saying it doesn't mean shit. Two examples I'm going to bring out. One, during the Taco Bell dinner scene where the Karen, we can call her that, the Karen, calls him a savage brew. What do you say if I want to see her savage brew? She thinks that her dressing him down is going to make him feel bad. Because in that society, when you say things to people like that, they're going to cower. He just goes, thanks. He just doesn't care. Or when after Cocteau's been murdered and the police chief is coming and he says, you can't leave. You're under arrest. The very concept of you being under arrest dictates you can't leave. As if you just saying that without the ability to enforce it means something. No, it's absurd. It's they have no concept of actual reality of enforcing anything. They live in a society where if you just say something, it happens, as opposed to a reality where you have to actually make it happen. But to our point, we live in this reality now where people say things all the time on social media. They say things, and they're supposed to think that that's going to make something like just calling me any sort of list of names that we all get called on a regular basis. Like that's supposed to mean I'm that thing, or dressing me down on Twitter is supposed to make me feel bad. No, because you're a coward behind a keyboard and you're meaningless. And I think that is one of those other things that just somehow translates to today. Their words are meaningless as all the woke tards who throw their words at us today, calling us racists and bigots. It's meaningless. It's stupid. All right. Anybody want to add anything else before we give our scores? You all good?
I could talk about this movie for hours upon hours. Like,
I could keep going if you want.
Oh, I could, but it is.
I could do like a stream perfection in this society. I just love how complicated it is but it's presented in such a fun way. Like anybody who enjoys this movie can enjoy it on a lot of different levels. If you're into deep philosophical movies, you can watch this. If you're into dumb fun action movies, you can watch this. There's just a whole lot here. This movie has so much to offer, and it baffles me that a movie like this can exist just at all.
Now, you have seen Judge Dredd, the original, right?
Oh,
not the original. I've seen the 2013, but not the
That's
original.
terrible. That is the worst.
Young man, you go to your room.
That is the
I know.
worst of
I've been
Stallone.
told that it's shit, so I'm not going to watch it.
It is.
It is, but you still got to watch it.
I don't need to
watch it
check
for Armando.
garbage.
Armando Sante's good in it. He's good. He does a good job. But that movie, that's the worst. This is the best of Stallone. That's the worst of Stallone.
Yeah.
Didn't they come out pretty close to each other?
Oh,
Like within 5 years?
Probably.
Yeah, something like that.
It's about that range.
Yeah. But the whole thing about the fact is that what was this? Yeah, Legatus, we mentioned that. No, we said it in the agreement. Yeah, we know that Pizza Hut and Taco Bell are owned by Yum. It's the same corporation. Yeah, same corporation. But crap, I lost my point. Oh, I remember now. Okay, this movie is, in my opinion, a perfectly structured movie in terms of delivering all the proper points and all the points you want to get out of it. A hero, a villain, trials for the hero, a villain that is charismatic, as I said, and you love him on scene, but you don't want him to win. A hot chick who is good at heart, but doesn't quite get it. A couple foils here and there. A wise ass in Dennis Leary. Great action sequences that perfectly chain together and are believable to an extent of that it's happening. And in the end, the guy gets the girl. The hero gets the girl. He won her over for that kiss. He surprises her with the kiss, but then she's like, "Oh yeah, I want some of that. Now I'm thirsty for that." And then there was celebrating to be had that night. You know it. You know there was celebrating. Snoo happened.
We've got to talk about Bob for a second. Just the comic relief that went along with him. Come on.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Look at what he does. Just plain and simple. Look at what he was. He wasn't a big character through the movie, but he was that integral part that was, for the 90s, I can be your assistant. And basically that's what the assistants were in the 90s, is they'd go back and forth from whoever was the most powerful person, kind of relating back to some of the politics of LA at the time and San Francisco. And I cannot help but believe he's represented somebody that's from San Francisco that's still in
he definitely represents a certain section of individuals today that believe this particular month with which we're streaming this video belongs to them and only them.
Dinosaurs?
Yeah, it's Jurassic Month. Yeah, that's it. But yeah, Bobby is, and I love it how he always runs away. Best of luck, sir. I'm out of here. Oh, Mr. Friendly, I believe I'm here to help you. That's right. Yeah, Bobby, here. Choose the hair color. Come on. But yeah, so this movie, there's a reason it's called classic. There's a reason. It took me years to get this copy, because for a while there was a pressing out there that was only 4:3, not widescreen. And one time I bought it by accident, and it spent a year under my bed because that's where I threw it, and I didn't want to see it because I go, what 4x3? What are you talking about? I don't want 4x3. I want widescreen. Ah! I mean, I got angry, and then finally,
you should talk to Zack Snyder.
Fuck that. That was one of the aspects of the movie I did not enjoy. I reviewed it. I thought it was okay, but I did not. I don't like watching things in 4x3 unless it was of that era, and there's no version where you can stretch it out. I mean, I tolerate the first 3 seasons of Farscape in that because that's what it was filmed in. But then in season 4, you get the widescreen. It's all good. But so it took me a while to get this one.
Aside about that, I don't know if you know this, but the digital releases of the Friends TV show, it was released publicly in 4x3, but they found unused negatives, and so they're using unused negatives for the movie. So they're widescreen. There's a whole bunch of Easter eggs that no one saw that's in the widescreen version because it was cut off before. So there's a couple scenes like Joey walks into the apartment and there's a gaping hole in the wall right next to him. It wasn't on shot before. A whole bunch of behind the scenes shit, and no one cares.
A show I have never seen one episode of.
I watched it all.
I love that show. It's so bad. I love it.
It did fall apart in the final season, though, horribly. Especially because, well, I obviously we're done. Quick tangent as we end here. I always got annoyed with the whole Monica Chandler adopting thing because they go through the whole thing and then freaking Courtney Cox gets pregnant at the end of the season. So she's actually pregnant and they're hiding it, but they go through the whole adoption thing. It's like, God damn it. God.
Just make it so she had a surprise pregnancy. I know. Just write it in.
Why are you doing this? She is actually pregnant. Like they hid Lisa Kudrow being pregnant forever in that one season until they actually finally wrote it in at one point. I mean, it's funny when that's classic 90s and 80s thing where they hide pregnancies with large objects. And that taught me to spot it going forward. It's like, somebody's pregnant in a show.
At least modern movies use CGI, like with Scarlett Johansson and Gal Gadot. They were both pregnant filming movies recently. Yeah. Just use CGI now.
Well, yes. Gal Gadot was pregnant during Wonder Woman, and they CGI now. But so anyway, all right. So we're tangenting, which means we are done. We could keep going, but we're at an hour and a half, and there's only so much we can ask.
It's very unusual for a non-tentpole like Lord of the Rings or Star Wars movie that we go this long.
Oh yeah. Because, and I know if we had other people here, we would go longer because more opinions were thought. But there's only 3 of us, so I am going to shut it down. Scores. I go first. It is my week. 9.5. 9.5. I love this movie. My objective criticisms, again, the world building, couple technical things here and there. At one point I did spot they forgot to switch Wesley Snipes' eye colors, or the camera reversed it a couple of times. I spot these things and I notice it. Come on, editing. Let's not have that happen. But other than that, 9.5. I love it. That's about all I can criticize by the world building questions I always have. Oh, wait. Oh my God. We can't end without talk. We tangented and I forgot. 3 seashells. 3 seashells. How can we not do this without talking about the 3 seashells? The question of the ages. How do the 3 seashells work? The final line
there
of the
is
movie.
A video on Twitter discussing how those 3 seashells work, but it has to do with toilet paper in your hand.
But without knowing answers, I always envisioned it's some sort of device where it's all hands-free and you don't have to do anything. No, I don't want to know that. I don't want to know that because that's no better than toilet paper.
No, it's in fact worse.
It's worse. I mean, goddamn, we live in an age of wet wipes. God damn it.
Well, and we have, what are those fancy toilets in Europe called?
Bidets.
Yeah. Oh, I just go in the shower, honestly. I go in the shower, clean myself off. But that's a whole discussion for we just went there, didn't we? Okay, we're gonna end this. 9.5, Jed, score.
So yeah, I went into this with very little expectations beyond the fact, it's a Stallone movie from the 80s or 90s. It's gonna probably be a dumb, fun action movie. I'll probably be giving it about a 6, maybe a 7.5 at most if it's really good. But I would be giving this a near perfect score if it weren't for the timeline aspects of it, which I think is very damaging. It's a framing part of the story. It's the inciting incident, basically, and it's flawed to such a degree. It does cause a lot of issues, but I'm gonna give it a solid 9.
Solid 9 from Jed. You guys know that's a big deal. Jed doesn't like
it's a really big deal. It's just because there's so many interesting thematic discussions to be had. Like, yes, it does make some firm stances on some stuff, but it just leaves you asking so many questions. And it's not questions of, oh, why does that make sense? How does that make sense? Not questions like that. It's like, no, how would that work? And those are the types of questions that I love a movie leaving me with. And this movie just is one that I want to watch again and again to figure out those answers, to have interesting conversations. And that's what gets it to a 9 for me, is just
I told you,
how deep it is.
Dozens of times, because you could just put it in and it's a good time. And you can think about those. In the past, I've thought about the franchise wars. I've thought about what could that look like? What could that be like? I've thought about all those things that you think about too. I love it. Mustang, what are you scoring?
This puppy's going a 9.0 on the Caltech Richter scale.
All right. So there you go. We're all 9 or above on this one. Thank you to both Jed and Mustang. There will be no show next weekend because these guys are off to Dallas for the Dallas meetup. So I'm left by my lonesome to fend for myself. I'll be fine. Don't worry, be okay. So we'll be back in 2 weeks with Jed's pick for the next movie. Until then, thank you, Jed and Mustang, for joining me. And thank you, chat. We know you guys have a good time. If you're watching this on the replay, whether it's the live replay or the re-upload, we hope you had a good time. Hit that like button, leave a comment, and we hope to see you next time. Until then, everybody, have a good night and take it easy. Have a good night or day wherever you may be.
Chevron 1, coded.
For my ally is the Force, and the powerful ally it is. Life creates it, makes it grow.
You failed, Your Highness. I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
Cry havoc, and let's set the tongues of war.
Chevron 2 encoded.
Conan, what is best in life? Crush your enemies, see them driven before you, to hear the lamentation of their women.
It's all in the reflexes.
I'll also say that you're heavy into martial arts, Tai Chi and all that killer stuff. I suppose we have to register you as a lethal weapon.
Chevron 3 encoded.
And somebody ought to belt you in the mouth. But I won't. The hell I will.
Chevron 4 encoded.
Do you expect me to talk? No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
Chevron 5 encoded.
You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Chevron 6 encoded.
That's why you can't, little boy.
Back off, man. I'm a scientist.
You shall not pass!
I thought I'd die fighting side by side with Al.
What about side by side with a friend?
A day may come when the courage of men fails, when we forsake our friends and break all bonds of fellowship. But it is not this day.
Chevron 7 is locked.